The brokerage world has talked about an IRA account because that's what they promote. And it got so mainstream that people believe that's what the title of or the acronym IRA stands for.
So it's marketing.
It was all about the marketing.
Welcome, friends, to the Invested in Faith show, where faith meets finance in the most practical ways. You know, in a world that feels more uncertain by the day, there's something powerful about bringing together spiritual guidance, practical application, and intentional living. That's what we do here. We're creating clarity and confidence when everything around us feels anything but certain. Every conversation we share is thoughtfully designed to help you align your informed decisions with purposeful action so you can achieve the results that truly matter to you and your family. I'm Bradford Hancock, joined with Michael Wallin, and we're honored to be your guides on this journey. As a certified financial planner and a managing partner of Optimize Advisory Services, Michael serves clients virtually throughout the nation, bringing clarity through biblical principles. You may have seen Michael on AARP's Rural America Live TV show discussing estate planning technique, but honestly, what matters most is the conversation we're getting ready to have right here with you. If you're thinking, what would this look like in my financial situation? Then you absolutely need to connect with our community at investedinfaith.com. Today's discussion, IRA, beyond the acronym, touches on one of our 4 core pillars and will be a reference point for many of our future shows, where faith meets action and where your financial future gets personal attention it deserves. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and let's explore how faith-informed financial decisions can create a certainty you're looking for. We're Bradford Hancock and Michael Wallin, and we're so glad you're here.
Hello, Bradford. How are you today?
I'm swell.
Wonderful. Well, this topic is near and dear to me. For over 30 years of working with clients, I have never had a client actually tell me what IRA actually stands for.
What does it stand for?
The standard answer I get is an individual retirement account. However, it actually stands for individual retirement arrangement. And it is crucial that you understand who is involved in that arrangement and what does that arrangement allow you to do and what does the other parties do. So this arrangement is between you and the U.S. government.
So it's not agreement, it's arrangement.
It is an arrangement.
Right.
And each party has certain rules that they have to follow, which ties us back into a lot of our biblical principles, as the Bible spells out a lot of rules that we have to follow so that we can have prosperity, where we can have confidence in results, that where the best interest for us can be exuded. So a lot of what I find in following the rules that are the guidelines of this design product or account is to allow you to be able to come back and find that prosperity in life. So Bradford, to make sure that we get the rule set up right, I want to read this definition verbatim to us.
Okay.
An individual retirement arrangement is a personal savings plan that offers tax advantages to an individual who sets aside money for retirement. The arrangement is designed for an individual. And I think that's really one of the core elements that we first have to understand. This is for an individual. Now, the U.S. government does look at a married couple as an individual. So a lot of times when people say, well, I may not have worked, or, what happens if my husband passes away with that IRA? A married couple is considered in the eyes of the IRS as one individual. However, this arrangement is not designed for beneficiaries. And so understanding the elements of the IRA and what that arrangement is also gives you a set of rules of what you need to do for your beneficiaries in the event that you don't exhaust all of your IRA while you're living, and that money would ultimately be transferred to them for their benefit. What the government has allowed us to do in the form of an IRA is that we're able to take money, we're able to set it aside into an account or an annuity. That's where a lot of times people have gotten confused over the years. The brokerage world has talked about an IRA account because that's what they promote. And it got so mainstream that people believe that's what the title of or the acronym IRA stands for.
So it's marketing.
It was all about the marketing.
Okay.
What it should have been is an IRA arrangement that could be held in an account or in an annuity. And that's based upon what type of custodian you're using to be in custody of the asset during the arrangement. So as we look at it, what has the government allowed us to do with this IRA? So we have earned income, and over a period of having that earned income, when the IRA came out in 1975, what it allowed was a provision of us taking some of that earned income we've made this year, contributing it into an IRA, and then allowing that to be a tax deduction within certain parameters of a high wage earners may not be able to deduct it, but for the most common person, they're able to keep that as a deduction. So it's not counting as a taxable event for them for that year. Then any gains that occurs while that money is in deferral also grows tax deferred. So every year that the account owner is not having to pay taxes. Ultimately, at the end of the deferral period, and most of the time that happens at the required beginning date of age 73, that account owner is forced by the federal government as a part of the arrangement to take what's called an RMD, a required minimum distribution. That required minimum distribution typically starts out around 4.1% of the account value is having to be liquidated. And we'll talk in a moment about how you actually come to that calculation.
Yeah.
But that is now forcing money to come out of that account. You are able to put the money in and use it as a tax deduction. Then the money grows tax deferred, but then it becomes fully taxable at the owner's current tax rate as the money is being distributed throughout retirement. Now, a lot of times an individual that, and we've worked with a lot of clients over the years, they like the idea of avoiding taxes. That may not always be in their best interest. Sometimes it's better that if you could come in and have some of your money taxable and get that into a different type of account. If you create a tax tsunami where you've always deferred the taxes and then ultimately you get into retirement where you may have less tax deductions during that time. Okay. Many retirees are just using a standard deduction. They no longer have interest that may be able to come against their taxable income. They may not be able to count off, other deductions, could be health cost deductions, things of that nature during their earning years. They get into these retirement years, they have no coupons, so to say, against the taxes. Now they have a windfall, a taxable income coming to them. And it can impact other sources of income, such as Social Security. So again, understanding the arrangement, understanding how we came about even having an IRA. And then in 1995, we got the complementary side of an IRA called a Roth IRA. And that really gave us the ability to start doing tax coaching with clients, to start moving money over during their deferral period, bit by bit, into a Roth IRA to mitigate that potential taxable event during their retirement years.
All right, so thank you for all that. So give us a history of how did we get here?
I think it's a great point. I'm a big believer in Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. And so if we go back and we start looking at how did people save for retirement years ago? Well, many, and you probably can reflect on grandparents talking about this.
It was, a bank account. It was a savings account or
pensions.
Coins, or pensions.
Where they work, pensions companies wanted to make sure that their workers had money to be able to live on in retirement. So for many years, it was a dependency upon a pension. And then as a subsidy, Social Security was created to complement what you were getting in a pension benefit.
In the 30s, right?
If you're referring to Social Security, yes, Social Security came out in the 30s as a complementary piece. But pensions was the main source of income. And, probably for over 100 years, people would rely upon what they were getting from pensions. And then in 1974, we had the government pass an act called ERISA, ERISA. And the ERISA Act was created to really give more structure around the private retirement plans. And so that birthed the IRA. And in the beginning stage, it was a traditional IRA.
Okay.
And that came about in 1975. And as we mentioned, the Roth IRA actually came about in 1995. So we still have some pension plans that are out there today, but really in the 80s, we saw a strong movement away from pensions, and we moved from what's called a defined benefit plan, which is what a pension is, to a defined contribution plan. And many of our listeners today probably recognize those as 401ks, 403bs,
All right.
457 plans. Those are more of that 400 series. And the IRA came about for those individuals that needed to maybe put a little more money aside. Or one of the areas that is so often overlooked is the spousal IRA. So imagine a one-income household. And that individual, because they had earned income, they were out putting money into a traditional IRA to help create more retirement savings for the family. And then you had the homemaker that was doing a full-time job, working at the house, and they weren't able to save. Well, the government allows, under an arrangement with that homemaker, for them to set up a spousal IRA, not based upon their earned income, but upon the working spouse's income. And that is so often overlooked. In 30 years of working with clients, it is very rare that I actually have a family sit down with me and that they have ever established a spousal IRA.
I can't say I've even ever heard of that. You mentioned series, 400 series. Are there other series?
Well, you do have, away from the most common 401 series, you do have other inside of the 400 series of it. There's other types of retirement accounts inside of that. They're less common, less frequently used. The most dominant is going to be the 401k or a 403b. A 403b is more designed around educators or hospitals. Those types of occupations that are stemmed from nonprofit entities.
Okay.
Now, one of the unique things is a 403b-9 is a church plan. So ERISA does not cover church plans. They are separate from the government, as we see a lot of the separation between government and church.
So what are some of the pros and cons of the IRA?
Well, the pros is that you're establishing money for retirement. You do get some tax advantages in being able to do that. Having money, having a goal, having a plan set up so that your actions of savings is aligning to a destination of what you're wanting to achieve, I think is critical. So I don't believe that just setting up a retirement account, setting up a retirement annuity through the form of an IRA is the be all end all. I think one of the things that we have to do is actually begin with having a plan that is in place. And that plan actually brings in a tax coaching session, because one of the biggest disadvantages that I see as I've worked with clients is that they've done this deferral. They have separation of employment. They're out enjoying retirement. They may have other means that they're utilizing now, and they allow this IRA to continue growing. What ends up happening is two things. When they have to be forced to take the money out in retirement, it may now come in and impact their Social Security, causing either 50% or 85% of their Social Security benefit to now become taxable.
85%.
85% of their Social Security benefit would now be counted as taxable income. Social Security in itself is not taxable. Social Security only becomes taxable when it is complemented with other forms of income during retirement. So you've got to be very judicious and have a plan of action so that you don't create an unnecessary tax tsunami in retirement.
Do you have an example of that where that's with a client has worked to the negative?
One of the clients that really comes to mind. I coached him for several years of actually going into retirement because he had a very large 401k. And as long as he stayed employed, that 401k was tax deferred. Okay. There's no limit on the age. As long as you're still working for the company you have your 401k with, then that money is staying deferred. However, the day you retire, your RMDs start by the December 31st of that year.
So if you retired in May, by December of that year,
you have a required minimum distribution that must be taken. So because he was way past his required beginning date. This is an individual that was approaching 77 years of age. So he had already bypassed it. And all he was trying to do is avoid the taxes. So upon his retirement, now he had to start taking an RMD. Based upon his income, he had a very controlled expense habit in his life. His Social Security was an ample amount to be able to cover those bills. But now, because of his age and the distribution factor of the RMDs, it forced an extra $50,000 of income on top of what he was already making. So all of a sudden, his Social Security hadn't been taxed on before. All of a sudden, he skied all the way through the top part. So 85% of his Social Security now started becoming a taxable income. That was a negative impact because he was like, I thought adding this on top of it was just going to be more income for quality of life. He didn't realize how it was going to impact his taxes. So what I had been trying to do over the number of years of working with him was to coach him in moving that money over into a Roth. Let's get that money out and let's start moving it to a Roth so we could control the tax distribution, not letting the federal government, through that arrangement, dictate the terms.
Before we wrap up today, let's go back to a few terms you mentioned just so we make sure everyone is clear on what they mean. The RMD.
The RMD is required minimum distribution. That is required to come out after an individual has met the required beginning date, which is when they turn age 73. And so the required minimum distribution can either come out in that year that an individual turns age 73, or for that first year, they can defer it till April 1st of the following year.
And IRA. Can you give us that one more time just so it's burned in?
An IRA is not an individual retirement account. It is an individual retirement arrangement. And if anybody would like to fact check this information today, feel free to go to publication 590 of the IRS codes, and it outlines all of what an individual retirement arrangement is and what those rules are.
So this has been Invested in Faith, where we help people find certainty in uncertain times. If you got value out of today's show, like us, subscribe, or tell your friends. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Optavise Advisory Services, LLC, Optavise, is an investment advisory firm registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The oral and written communications of an advisor provide you with information about which you determine to hire or retain an advisor. For more information, visit https://advisorinfo.sec.gov and search for our firm name. This presentation has been provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as legal or investment advice or a recommendation of any particular security or strategy. The investment strategy and themes discussed herein may be unsuitable for investors depending on their specific investment objectives and financial situation. Information obtained from third-party sources is believed to be reliable, though its accuracy is not guaranteed. Opinions expressed in this commentary reflect subjective judgments of the author based on conditions at the time of publication and are subject to change without notice. Past performance is not indicative of future results.